Now, we begin in the United States, where President Donald Trump says he has ordered the positioning of 2 nuclear submarines in the appropriate region in response to, quote, highly provocative comments made by former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. President Trump says he took this action just in case the top Russian politician's statements have hidden implications. We have details in this report.
The U.S. President Donald Trump did not say where the 2 submarines will be positioned in line with U.S. military protocol, but he explained his action is a protective step in response to the words of the former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, who recently threatened the U.S. over President Trump's ultimatum giving the Russian leader to realistically end his country's war with Ukraine or face tough sanctions. Russia and the U.S. reportedly have the most nuclear arms in the world, and both countries also have a fleet of nuclear submarines. In his post on his Truth social media platform, the U.S. president did not say whether he was referring to nuclear-powered or nuclear-armed submarines. Speaking to reporters later on, President Trump said, quote, "A threat was made, and we didn't think it was appropriate, so I have to be very careful. I do that on the basis of safety for our people. A threat was made by a former president of Russia, and we are going to protect our people," end quote. The Kremlin has so far made no public comments on the issue, but Moscow's stock market fell sharply following President Trump's statement. President Trump has set a new deadline for the Russian President Vladimir Putin to bring the war against Ukraine to an end by the 8th of August, but he hasn't shown any signs of the willingness to do so.
Meanwhile, the Russian President Vladimir Putin says his country's troops were advancing on the entire front line in the war against Ukraine. And this comes despite threats by the U.S. to impose sanctions against Russia if a ceasefire isn't agreed upon in about a week from now. Well, President Putin says all disappointments over his stance arise from what he calls inflated expectations. He had earlier voiced hopes of further peace talks with Ukraine, but that hasn't translated into actions that could lead to a lasting peace deal. Speaking a day after one of the deadliest Russian air attacks on Kyiv, President Putin repeated his demands for Ukraine's formal recognition of Russian-occupied territories, which Ukraine doesn't agree with. But Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's ready to meet with the Russian leader for talks anytime. Well, to discuss the Russia-Ukraine war and the position of the U.S., let's bring in now global affairs analyst Dr. Patrick Coker to share his insights. And we thank you very much for your time with us. But what do you make of President Trump's latest move now?
Thank you very much. This latest move is definitely a response to the trends and the rhetorics from Russia. Now, it is quite strategic because it demonstrates power and indeed deterrence. So should the adversary intend to go beyond the war of words, then America is ready to take necessary measures.
Right, and the former Russian leader Medvedev and Trump are not exactly new to the war on words, and Medvedev himself is warning of a dead hand threat, which some military analysts say could be a reference to the codename of Russia's retaliatory nuclear strikes. Do you agree?
Indeed, I do. And about 18 months ago, Russia did the same thing. Medvedev did the same thing, said the same thing, where he threatened the use of limited nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Now, this could be interpreted to be a level of pressure on Russia, because once Russia is being a pattern, once there is a pressure, once there is pressure, they tend to move towards the nuclear option. And of course, the posture, the nuclear posture and escalation needs to be managed. America is just showing some level of assertion. In any case, the end game is for peace to reign. And you agree with me that the tendency from Russia, what we hear now, is the fact that they would need to go to the table to discuss.
Right. And amidst this position that you have just revealed, do you see the ultimatum given by the American president, which is for him to agree to peace talks, stop the war, so to speak, before the end of next week? Do you see that happening?
If we look at trends, it is neither here nor there. In the past, we knew that President Trump had given ultimatums, and not much came out of it because Russia really discountenanced those ultimatums. However, the rhetorics that we have seen now, the pattern is showing some level of actions being taken from both sides. As we speak, even though we know that nuclear-powered submarines are all over the world, 24 hours, 365 days in a year, looking around stiltily, positioning them and saying it just gives the impression that should necessary ultimatum not reached, probably sanctions will come, and secondary sanctions are likely to follow. For example, India is already looking at other markets for its energy. Other countries will be sanctioned. Well, what I gather from other analysis is that these are just mere war of words. Whether they will get to the level of going nuclear, it's totally not in sight. However, both adversaries, as it were, are posturing. Of course, this also assures allies, for example, countries at the front line, and other, for example, Japan, South Korea. This assures them that, yes, America is in position to give them some level of comfort before there are surprises.
Let's come over to your assessment of the Ukrainian side now, with all the support it is getting from the US and elsewhere. Would you say that the Ukrainian leader is still under some form of pressure, especially with the battering from Russia?
I must say that the situation some, say, 4 or 5 months ago has actually tilted in favor of Ukraine, and the pressure has been taken off the leadership of Ukraine. Before that time, the relationship between Washington and Ukraine wasn't very cordial. But since the meeting with the EU, we've seen a tilt whereby America is now ready to support with some weapons. Of course, Europe has to purchase those weapons. Now, I think Ukraine is in a better position, as it were. However, some of the weapons promised have not really been deployed. When they are deployed, of course, they will be used appropriately. And I think Russia is preempting the deployment of those weapons and doing the needful to make sure they gain more territories And even if they go to the table to discuss and negotiate, they will be negotiating from a position of strength.
All right, Dr. Kuka, we'll leave it at this point now. We thank you very much for your contributions and hope to engage with you at another time on this and other salient issues. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.